This is going to be kind of a long video. I have taken some notes and notepad beside here that I want to kind of follow in this discussion slash rant slash I don't even know what. You guys have seen it by the title. We are talking about the current state of ships, or rather boats, in War Thunder. It is currently Saturday the 8th of April. This weekend there's another boat CBT going on. In this one we have boats from all the nations, and not just 2 or 3 boats, we actually have pretty much all the boats from all the nations except for Japan actually. Fighting against each other. There's still aircraft, there's still everything, and I've only played a couple of games and I'm already sick of it. I'm going to try and keep this video as professional as possible, so let's get this right out of the way. Gaijin, you fucked up. When it first became clear that War Thunder's naval aspect wasn't going to be ships, like big battleships, and it was rather going to be small-scale boat combats, honestly I was actually kind of excited, because I was expecting it to be the combined battle aspect, like boats against tanks. We don't have any game like that really, and I would have really liked to see that. Then well, it didn't really happen. Now, of course, it was clear from the start that War Thunder's game mechanics don't really lend themselves well to big-scale combat like proper battleships. If you want to have realistic battleship battles, then you would look at games that will take hours, so that's not really a pointer. Imagine, for example, yourself driving the Yamato and just getting shot at by the entire enemy team for 3 hours. That wouldn't be fun for you, that wouldn't be fun for them. So, no, I do support Gaijin in this idea that big battleships simply do not work. Destroyers, maybe. Light cruisers, maybe. But anything more than that, I really don't see that working in War Thunder at all. But yeah, I was really excited of the idea of boats facing together with tanks, say on maps that we already have. For example, jungle would be a perfect example. Say we make the river on jungle a little bit deeper, and all of a sudden you could have boats and tanks on the same map. Boats having the advantage of being faster than tanks, being able to, for example, spot or provide some long-range firing support against lightly armored targets. And tanks, of course, with more armored tanks having the advantage of being much more accurate since they are on solid ground, and being able to shoot back at boats. Really, no losses there. What we got instead was anti-aircraft on water. Now, even at the start I still tried to defend the game mode, right? I gave it a fair chance, I reviewed some vehicles, I gave suggestions, I even did a tutorial on how to take down enemies faster, which, by the way, if you don't know that yet, there's 2 ways. You either blow up a torpedo in 1 shot, which doesn't really always work, not every boat has a torpedo, or you turn 3 sections of the hull on one side black. Those are guaranteed ways to kill a boat. But it's been months. It's literally been months, and there's been so little actual development. It's just become really stagnant, I have to say. Boats have become incredibly boring and stagnant to play, and as such I don't even want to play them anymore. At the start I was still really excited to get gameplay in, to show you all the new boats, show all the new aspect of War Thunder, but especially with the April Fool's event, which kind of ruined it, interestingly. The April Fool's event was so fun that boats in comparison are just not worth playing, honestly. I would rather have the April Fool's event come back as it is than look forward to the entire boat aspect as it is playing out right now. And I don't think I'm the only one sharing this opinion. I've read a lot of comments saying the same. There's really no hype for boats anymore. None. So let's go through some of the main problems that I can think of off the top of my head. Firstly, classes. In boats you have torpedo boats, you have boats with large caliber cannons, you have howitzers, you have fast boats, you have slow boats, you have boat faces, and so on. The problem is none of these classes really work that well. Take the torpedo boats, for example. They can be amazing fun, like honestly, torpedo boats are really fun. They're very fast, very nimble. The torpedoes can one-shot pretty much anything if you hit center mass, and it's actually really fun to play. The problem is they don't have any armor, and in order to work you have to get into knife fighting range with other boats that likely have many more guns than you do. Now your designated task, of course, is to torpedo big ships, but if they are aware of you, they'll just rip you apart before you even get anywhere close. And the maps don't really lend themselves well to these kinds of torpedoes. The maps are mostly, well, of course, since they're on water, they're all flat. There's no elevation change in boats the same way that you have in tanks, for example, where you can go up a hill, you can get into a depression, you get into a valley and stuff like that. There's nothing of that in boats. It's all flat maps. And even though there is some cover on the map, it's mostly open water and there's no way to really sneak around without being seen. The maps are kind of too small for that, if it makes any sense. And the map borders are very well laid out and very much out in the open as well. For example, if with the exception of the latest map, which you can see probably some gameplay in the background, there's one spot where you can actually kind of sneak around, but even then, you can get up to there, but then after that it's just wide open water. So the torpedo boats don't really have a choice but to go head on into the enemy and keep throwing boats at him until they get some luck and somebody doesn't notice them. Because other than that, they're just cannon fodder. Oh, and the best part. The torpedo boats are all about the torpedoes, right? They do carry some secondary armament in the form of machine guns and cannons, but nothing really designed to really take down other boats. They are mostly against aircraft defense or against other lighter boats. The problem is, in realistic mode, you don't even reload your torpedoes. So essentially, when you are in RB mode and you drop all of your torpedoes, you turn useless. As soon as you drop your torpedoes, you turn useless. You might as well just be a floating duck. Oh, and something that I actually forgot to mention as well. On the boats where the torpedoes fired an angle, like for example, I think the American PT series have some example of that. In those cases, when you hold down the torpedo button, normally you have the prediction lines, right, of the torpedoes. However, they are not accurate. They are not at all accurate. In those boats where the torpedoes are mounted at an angle, they don't follow the line. They actually do not follow the line exactly, they go slightly more forwards, which essentially turns it into torpedoes already being hard to hit as they are, since boats can simply move out of the way, unless you're going after bigger boats, but by the time you're close enough to drop a torpedo to a bigger boat, your captain is probably dead and you're just steering around randomly in the water. Not only is it already hard enough to hit a torpedo, it gets even harder because they don't go where the game tells you they will go. I have missed quite a few torpedoes crossing those lines. Then you have the bigger boats with proper cannons. We're talking 75mm, 88mm up here. Now so far the biggest cannon we've really seen was the 88mm gun on the German concrete and bigger torpedo boats. There is a 114mm howitzer on the Dark Class MGB, that's kind of a different class. These cannons are awesome against light boats. No lie there. Against torpedo boats, you absolutely destroy them. They are, however, quite challenging to use, and this is down to a point that I'm going to make a little bit later on in the video. Waves. Now, the problem is these cannons, and especially the German ones, which only have HE shells, they still feel underpowered when you're going up against other big boats. I've put dozens of shots into other big boats with similar sized armament, and what would result in just light damage to the hull, maybe kill some crew on the deck, but that's pretty much it. These cannons against lighter boats feel awesome, but against other big boats like yourself, they feel like pea shooters. They don't do enough damage. They don't feel satisfying to use. It's like you have this big 88. You actually, in some cases, you have two 88mm cannons mounted on the deck, and you expect those things to do massive damage, but they don't. That is a really interesting one. The German concrete boats. This thing is really the only example we have of a actually armored boat so far. This thing can actually take a lot of damage, but it's also incredibly slow to compensate. This is arcade gameplay, right? The mouse, yes, the mouse feels like a race car compared to this thing. This thing takes forever to accelerate, it takes forever to stop again. Like, not even kidding, it takes at least a good 30 seconds to a minute for you to even start moving out of your spawn with full throttle forwards. It's horrible. What does result in is it's actually a decent boat when you are actually getting into combat, but it takes up to 5 minutes to even get into combat in the first place because your thing is so slow. By the time you get into combat, your enemies already have aircraft, and since you are such a huge and slow target that can't really evade at all, you just get one-shotted by aircraft. And it's absolutely no fun. Like, honestly, it's no fun driving this thing when there are aircraft around, because you just spend all of your time getting into battle, just get one shot by a goddamn bomb, goddammit! And then you have kind of the middle ground, stuff like the Dark Class MGB. Now this is by far the best example of fun boat gameplay you can have in this game. This one has the 114mm howitzer, but is still very mobile, very maneuverable. This is really fun. Now, of course, I do have some bias because it does share my name, right? MGB. But honestly, I've done a review on this thing, it's really fun to play. It's only one boat though. Out of all the boats we have, this is the most fun example we've had, and even this is going to become stale eventually. The howitzer has a very low velocity, which of course is accurate, and it feels very rewarding when you actually hit something. But even then, even this thing still needs hits on all 3 hull sections. You can essentially pummel the front of a boat all day long with 114mm, 114, not 140. 114mm howitzer and won't really do anything. You still have to hit all 3 sections of a boat, and this can be complicated when you have to take in mind the speed difference between you and your enemy, the muzzle velocity of it getting there, and of course the random effect of the waves. And this is the next point in this kind of rant. Boats are way too RNG to be fun. And this is specifically affecting the waves. Now, the waves affect boats, and this is realistic. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. The point I'm trying to make here is that the waves affect the boats too much, and as such it takes out any kind of actual skill or fun. Take for example, Dark Class MGB. Let's talk about this again. Skill cannons. Take skill cannons. Boats that have big cannons that require skill to aim, but that reward that skill. If you hit something, you're going to do massive damage. If you miss, you're going to have a massive penalty because slow reloads and stuff like that, right? Well, this works in tanks, for example, stuff like the KV-2, the Brummbär, the whole row. Heck, I've killed a T10M with my whole row in tier 5 battles because I felt like it, and it felt freaking awesome. But the thing is, in tanks, you have a very stable platform, and mostly you're down to your own skill. You can range find, you can judge the range by yourself, and when you hit that, when you fire the button, and you know what you're doing, you know what's going to happen. That's not the case in boats. Now, not only do you already have the difficulty of having to predict the where your enemy is going to go in the first place, how will the range affect it, how's the muzzle velocity of your gun, there's also the big aspect of you having to compensate for your own movement. Like, for example, if you are firing directly 90 degrees to your side, you have to compensate for your boat's own speed not to hit something. And this is already because, thanks to Gaijin actually taking the range in for you. You don't actually have to aim up like you have in tank cannons, because they tried it in the April Fool's event from 2016, and it was really hard to hit anything. So at least that aspect Gaijin has given it for us, but even then it's still very challenging. And even then, it's still all RNG because of the waves. You can't control how much you lead your target. You cannot control how the wave is going to affect your shooting. And what often happens is, you're trying to set up your shots perfectly, and the moment you want to fire, random wave hits and your boat just rocks up and your shot goes nowhere. This happens all the freaking time, and it makes long-range combat actually incredibly difficult, which is problematic for ships that require long ranges to work. Ships with big cannons, ships with 88mm cannons, or the 114mm howitzer. And this problem just becomes exacerbated when you think about that the only way to reliably kill a boat is to kill 3 sections of the hull. This is a point I'm going to get to back a lot during this rant. Well, the problem is some sections of the hull on different boats are smaller than the others. For example, on the Dark Class MGB, the rearmost section seems smaller than the 2 front sections. And the rearmost section is also the hardest one to hit because, first of all, there's nothing behind that, so if you miss, you miss. The target is small by itself, and also because boats in general just drive toward each other, only presenting the front. And the problem is, when you hit the front and the front of the hull section is already black, you can shoot as much as you want, it won't really do anything. And this is really where the core gameplay aspects of boats really fail. The way that boats is going right now, the way that development is going right now, this isn't going anywhere. This is not going to work out. So really I've been rambling on for the past 50 minutes or so, depending on how I edit this video, but let's summarize what I essentially want to mean here. The boats are simply unfun. They just are, there's no fun in playing torpedo boats when you get chewed up completely as soon as you get within torpedo range. There's no fun in the big boats because they're way too slow and the accurate completely ruin them. There's no fun in any of these boats really, except for maybe the Dark Class MGB, which is a good middle ground, but it's the only one of its kind. The maps all pretty much play out the same. They're just the same, just some random variations of the same open waters and some cover in the form of islands. They're kind of too small, they're way too linear, they don't really allow for flanking gameplay. The only exception is one spot in the new map that I've shown before, but even that leads into wide open water, so you can't really flank around all that well. The aiming is way too RNG, the whole wave aspect just completely ruins boat gameplay in my opinion. It doesn't allow for skilled play It is just essentially who can spam out shots the best, because you can't really accurately aim 40 different critical sections of the boats. The kill times are way too high, again this down to being the current gameplay mechanic of having to destroy 3 sections of the same side of the hull, and the randomness aspect of the aiming. It simply is impossible to really effectively and consistently take down a boat. Torpedo boats have no chance to use their weapons, they just die beforehand. And the whole game mode really makes it prone to spawn camping. Essentially you have one team that falls off early on, then you have maybe some torpedo boats, which if by some miracle they survive, they simply go into the enemy spawn and start spawn camping the enemy boats. But this wouldn't really be a MikeGoesBoom rant without proposing some fixes, would it? I know, it's been... This video is getting way too long, I'm really sorry for that, but I really have to voice my opinions on this game mode, because else I'm seeing this really dying. So, keep in mind, my suggestions are from a gameplay point of view, not realism. Not by any chances are, none of the fixes I'm going to propose are realistic in any way, but this is what I think could fix the core gameplay aspects. First of all, the maps. We need different maps. We need a better map design. The visuals are good. God, I have to give it this. The visuals themselves are good. I like the African map. I like the ice map that we had. They look great. They just don't play well. We need something else than the same style of open water with some cover in the middle. Give us rivers, give us coastlines with shallow waters that disable torpedoes, for example. Make it so that the map actually plays into the gameplay, and different sections of the map, for example, affect the different things. Give us, for example, shallow waters that don't have as many waves, or that, for example, make it impossible to use torpedoes or stuff like that. Give us rivers where you can flank around, or if not rivers, at least canals or something. Maybe we can play around with elevation changes, although this is very hard to do, of course, in wide open waters. Maybe if we had rivers or something, we could play around with elevation changes. At the moment, the maps are just boring. The maps all play out the same. Any map you are in, it pretty much plays out the same. And not in a good way. Next up, torpedo boats. They need smoke. You've tested out in the April Fool's event, it worked really well. Now apply to both tanks and boats. And I think boats even needed more than tanks. Torpedo boats are way too vulnerable when they try to approach anything. They don't really have any chances to flank around. It simply doesn't happen. It's not like an M18 where you can flank around the map and use the cover of bushes. On water, you're on wide open water. Right. Even when you get within torpedo range, you mostly get shot up by anything. And that's if you get there without being spotted in the first place. Now making sure we can either launch these smoke shells, maybe for example from mortars. We can fire them forwards and a decent distance too, so that we can actually use it as cover to advance, not just cover like tanks to retreat, or even behind us to cover a retreat in case we do have somehow managed to get into firing range. Speaking of torpedo boats, make the torpedoes either reload automatically in realistic mode, which might not be all that realistic, or give us a dedicated zone in the spawn where we can reload. The problem is, I'm not even sure if you can reload in the capture zones. I don't think you actually can at the moment, but the way the torpedo boats just don't reload the torpedoes, which is the whole aspect of them. I mean, take torpedoes away from the name, they're only boats. Make it so we can actually reload these torpedoes in a dedicated zone in the spawn, because it doesn't work when you have to go into capture zones. These boats are way too fragile, they live and die upon their speed. If they stop in a capture zone, and if for example the enemy has captured all the zones, torpedo boats become useless. Speaking of capture zones, most of these capture zones are actually way too exposed as well. I think in the April Fool's event we had a capture zone that had a rock in the middle of that you could actually use as cover, and I would like to see more of that. Move the capture zones away from wide open water, make it so that teams actually have a chance to capture the zones. Next up, and this is really the main aspect, either massively reduce, or completely remove the rocking of boats due to the waves. I can't hammer this fact in enough, but it just completely ruins gameplay. Yes, it is realistic, I understand that, but it just introduces way too much RNG into the gameplay and completely ruins the fun of anyone trying to have any kind of skill to play. Especially with the current damage models, it just does not work. And speaking of damage models, the damage models need a massive rework as well. The idea is there, okay, I understand it. It's hard to do realistically. The idea is there. Kill 3 sections of the hull, kill the boat. Easy to understand. It's not easy to accomplish though. First of all, having that system makes it very boring throughout all the tiers, because it's always the same thing. Secondly, it makes it very hard to consistently do because of all the RNG factor of the aiming. And thirdly, it just is easily exploitable. Simply point your bow towards the front of the enemy, and they cannot hit your back section anymore, taking it so much longer to actually kill all of your crew. Now, I don't know how to fix this one. Again, I do think that boats are different from aircraft and tanks in that they work better with hit points in games. World of Warships is an example of that. World of Warships can make warships work because of hit points. If they had realistic damage models, games would take hours. We've been through this before. But the current option isn't really anything good either. Actually, I do have one proposal that could work, but I will not accept responsibility here, let's say that. We do have a sinking mechanic in the game, right? We have this percentage that happens when you get shot, you start sinking. The problem is, even though it's technically implemented in the game, I don't think I've ever died to sinking. There was one CBT run where boats were actually sinking and it would massively affect the gameplay, but I don't think I've actually ever died to sinking itself. It's always been either torpedo explosions, torpedoes hitting me, bombs of aircrafts. Actually, I probably died more times to aircraft than to enemy boats, which is also another ranting point, or simply all 3 sections of my hull getting destroyed. Sinking itself, not all that much. So what we can actually do here, if you want to still keep the mechanic of 3 sections of the hull being a guaranteed kill, make it so that if 1 section of your hull gets black, or if 2 sections of your hull gets black, then you actually start sinking rapidly. We could even have a mechanic right like fire prevention equipment on tanks, for example. Just instead of extinguishing fire, you could order your crew to bail out the water out of the boat, which would keep you afloat for longer, but would either have limited charges, for example, or limit your crew's fighting capability. For example, you would have to get some people out of the gunner's positions to bail out the boat. Something like that, maybe. This is something that could be worked, of course. I'm not saying that this is how it should be. This is something that you guys can also get your 2 cents on in the comment section down below. But I think it would be much more interesting than the current system we have, where sinking doesn't really affect the gameplay at all. It's just there and kind of not there. It's not really noticeable, and the current models just take way too long to work. I think this would kind of mix up the current meta as well, where boats are taking way too long to kill, and the problem is, when you have a 1-on-2 fight, you almost never win by yourself. Unless you can somehow get a lucky torpedo hit in. Since boats take so long to kill and it's all RNG, even a very skilled player cannot effectively and consistently dispatch a boat quickly, and as such 2-on-1 fights always end in the win of the 2 boats. And finally, aircraft. So here's the thing. Aircraft are already annoying in tanks, but I do like aircraft in tanks. You can work with them. You have AA, you can effectively take them down, you can use cover of houses, you can do many things as a tank to avoid aircraft. In boats, aircraft ruin it completely, like honestly. Aircraft have no chance against torpedo boats, for example, because they simply cannot hit them with the bombs. But the big boats, that take so goddamn long to get anywhere. I'm looking at a huge German concrete boat. You take 5 minutes to get into battle, and then you get taken down. Aircraft completely ruin big boats in this game. And with the bombs, it just doesn't work. Here's the thing. Even with all the guns that you have in the boats, it's very hard to actually take down aircraft that they are not flying directly towards you. The guns are just all over the place, and again, the waves taking effect both when firing against boats and both when firing against aircraft. It spreads your shots all around. Not to mention all of those times I've hit an aircraft in the nose with a 40mm Bofors cannon only to spark off. I'm not even going to mention that, that's just inherent warfare problems. But honestly, aircraft that dive bomb are just completely ruining the game for everyone else. And the problem is, it's not even fun for the aircraft either. In the latest CBT round, the aircraft only have 1 bomb drop. Even in arcade mode, they don't reload the bomb, right? Gaijin even had to limit the bomb sizes because aircraft were way too powerful. Aircraft are too powerful at sinking boats, and this is actually an interesting point here. In tanks, yes, aircraft can be annoying, but tanks are still more effective at taking out multiple tanks than aircraft are. Aircraft can get the strength of aircraft is to be able to insert a payload in a given spot quickly, kind of like an interceptor. Imagine that, but that's applicable to tanks. But tanks are still more effective at taking out other tanks. This is not the case in boats. Aircraft are more capable of taking out boats than boats are. And this, as a result, makes aircraft way too powerful in comparison to the boats and makes boats not fun to play. And then when you limit the payload of aircraft and remove the ability to reload that payload, what you essentially have is aircraft killing one boat and then flying around for the rest of the game not doing anything. The boat driver's not going to be happy, the aircraft pilot is not going to be happy, nobody is having fun like this. And the question is, how can you fix that? Well, one actual fix would be completely remove any aircraft that can only drop bombs. Just remove bombs from the equation completely. Make it so that only torpedo aircraft can actually participate in naval combat. That way they would have to actually fly low, they would have to use some skill to actually hit their torpedoes, they would still be effective against bigger boats. The bigger boats would still have a fighting chance against them, since a low aircraft that drops a torpedo is a vulnerable target, and it would be much more fun for both sides, giving the thrill and risk to reward to the aircraft player, especially if they can actually reload the torpedoes mid-air, or maybe even put in an airfield like we didn't have in any of these maps, and it would make the boat captains more aware that there's an aircraft around, because it could actually see it, and not only see a red dot on the minimap and big explosions a second after that. And it's also easier to defend themselves. It would make for much more fun gameplay. That, or go with my first suggestion, which was remove aircraft completely and make boats actually fight together with tanks instead. This is something that no other game except for Battlefield, for example, does, and it's something that I would really like to see. Boat, tank, combat. This is something that might or might not work depending on how it's implemented, but it would definitely be something unique and a big selling point for boats. Because how they are working right now, there's nothing going for them. If boats continue down the road they are now, I really cannot see a future for them. The development is taking way too long. The CBT runs are just dying, they're just boring, nobody wants to play them. There's barely any coverage on YouTube. This is probably the biggest giveaway. There's barely any coverage of boats on YouTube. There's absolutely no hype for them, the gameplay is way too bland. There really needs to be something to really set this game mode apart from everything else. Or pretty much all those who have pre-ordered the boat packs will have wasted their money on content that's going to be dead on arrival, that much I can guarantee you. If boats were to be released like they are right now, it's dead on arrival content. Honestly, I think this has been one of the longest rants I have done in a long while, if not ever. I think the longest rant I've done so far was the 1.59 patch, which... oh man, this is... this is actually kind of funny in comparison, but yeah. Boats need a lot of work. They are not ready for release. If you release them right now... there's just no point in playing them, honestly. They're just boring. It's just boring gameplay. There's a lot that needs to be changed, and none of that involves what we have right now. But, of course, this is just the opinion of one German Portuguese guy in his bedroom who's currently in his underwear. Guys, this is really... I know I say this all the time. I do like reading your comments, right? But this is really one of those videos where you have to voice your opinion. What's your position on boats? Have you played boats before? Have you not? How's your hype on boats? Are you excited for boats? Are you not excited for boats? Try and cut out all this chatter. Oh, we want big battleships. It won't work in War Thunder, okay? Just let's try and have a conversation about boats without screaming for battleships, okay? Take what we have right now, this boat combat, and suggest ways to make it better. What do you want to see if and when the only option you have is this kind of boat? Alright lads, this is going to be it for this very long video. Holy shit, it's going to take a lot of editing. If you stayed up until this point, congratulations! You have unlocked the achievement for listening to a German ramble about boat combat for half an hour or so. So pat yourself on the back, take some cookies around the description. By the way, I've updated the description as well. My PC specs are under there now, as well as the hardware I'm using. Hopefully soon I will actually get a head tracking kit to make more sim videos, so stay tuned for that. We'll have to see how things go. But anyways, rambling aside, hopefully you have enjoyed this video. If you did, seriously, like this video, it really helps out the channel, and share this video around if you really want to start a conversation about boats. Let's get the discussion going on, let's get the community involved, let's see how we together can propose fixes for what this game mode currently is, alright? If you're new around here and you've stuck around until this long, First of all, congratulations. I mean, you don't know me from anywhere and you've listened to a 30-minute long video. Nice. Do not subscribe just yet. Actually go to the channel, check out the rest of my content, see what you like for yourself, and then judge accordingly. It's alright. Lads, this is going to be it. As always, my name is MikeGoesBoom, and thank you for watching.
You can lift your head up to the sky, take a deeper breath and give it time. You can walk the path among the lines with your shattered frame of mind. Or instead you could always stay. We can wait right here and play until somehow you can find